to try and get this mess resolved. Joining me now is Shadow Education and Early Learning Minister Julian Leeser. Julian, what do you take from Littleproud knocking back a meeting with your leader, Susan Lee?
Well, the National Party is obviously having a ballot for its leadership, and they need to deal with those issues first and foremost, and those are issues that the National Party has to deal with. I'm looking forward to going back to Parliament next week, because in Parliament the issues won't be these side issues. They will be front and centre, the cost of living crisis that's been created by this government, a government that this week released inflation figures that show that core inflation had risen to 3.4%. Australians are paying more for everything. In my portfolio, education has gone up in terms of costs 5.6%. Childcare has gone up 11%. So we know the cost of energy has gone up. The cost of housing has gone up. We're likely to have an interest rate rise, which is going to put pressure on Australian families and Australian businesses. That's what your viewers want us to focus on. That's what the Australian public wants us to focus on. That's what I'm focused on.
And it would be great to focus on those, but it's hard to focus on it when Susan Lee's got vacancies in her shadow front bench. The Nationals have no shadow front bench at all. So it seems like a bit of a half-assed attempt to hold the government to account when your own house is in disarray. Last night, Tony Abbott told Liberal members at a book signing, quote, "We need a leader," this is the Liberal Party, "who has at least some points of difference, and we need to do it quick or we're dead in the water." Is Tony Abbott right?
We have a leader in Susan Lee who has my unequivocal support. And I'll tell you why she has my unequivocal support, James. Because we've had, as you've been discussing with Sharri Marks, an anti-Semitism crisis in this country. Susan Lee was the person that called for the Parliament to be returned to deal with the anti-Semitism crisis. It was Susan Lee who led our party to doing exactly the right thing here, not just waving the legislation through, nor just opposing it outright, but working to make a better bill, a bill that allows us to ban hate groups like Hizb ut-Tahrir, radical Islamist groups, neo-Nazis and boot hate preachers. And next week in the Parliament, we're going to be asking the government, how many hate preachers have you booted from this country? When are you going to list Hizb ut-Tahrir? When are you going to list Nazi organisations and disrupt their activities? Susan Lee has taken the leadership that has been so lacking from the Prime Minister, a Prime Minister that Matilda's parents say has betrayed our country. Australia faces serious times, and Susan Lee has provided the serious leadership that Australia needs today, and that's why I continue to back her unequivocally.
So Tony Abbott's comments, were they helpful?
Well, I'm telling you what I think of the leadership of the Liberal Party.
But what do you think about a former leader like Tony Abbott jumping in and having his input? Are his comments welcome, or should he butt out?
Look, I think we've got a leader, James, who's demonstrated a clear point of difference in relation to her handling of a national crisis as compared to the Prime Minister of this country, who's had to be dragged kicking and screaming at every point to deal with the anti-Semitism that Australia has been facing and has run our economy into the sand. I mean, Susan Lee gave a terrific speech at CEDA, at the Centre for Economic Development last year, where she talked about the need for us to return to disciplined financial management, where she talked about the need for us to return to pursuing policies of tax cuts and deregulation and industrial relations reform. These are orthodox Liberal Party policies. They are a real point of difference with the government. That's the agenda Susan is prosecuting. That's the agenda I'm prosecuting. And I look forward to us prosecuting it with renewed vigour as the Parliament returns next week.
Julian, just before I let you go, I believe you've written to New South Wales Police asking them to ban protests during the visit of Israel's president to Australia next month. Is that right? And can you elaborate?
So that's right, James. I haven't asked them to ban protests altogether, but what I have said is that we can't have the Jewish community re-traumatised after Bondi. And so the idea that protesters would go to Bondi or would go and protest outside synagogues or would protest outside Jewish communal institutions is just un-Australian. And I think at a time where the Jewish community is grieving, to see these protests is an insult. I think people need to have a right to protest, but they need to have some respect for their fellow Australians. And so I've asked the New South Wales Police Commissioner to exercise his powers to ban protests from Bondi, ban protests from outside synagogues, and ban protests from outside Jewish communal bodies during the visit of the President of Israel.
Have you had any response, and what do you expect the response will be?
I haven't had any response, but I hope the Police Commissioner and the New South Wales Government put the safety of law-abiding Australians first and foremost.
Julian Leeser, always appreciate talking to you. Thanks so much.